I think that we can start. I see no objections. We begin. Good morning, colleagues. Welcome to the Russian Internet Governance Forum and its session dedicated to cybersecurity. My name is Oleg Demidov. I'm director of Peer Center of International Security and Global Internet Governance. I will be moderating this session today. We have gathered here wonderful panelists, our European colleagues and Russian experts. Let me do the introductions first. We have with us Chris Buckridge, senior officer of RIGF NCC. Chris? Hi, Chris. Welcome. We also have here Ludmila Bokova. Ludmila is the deputy chair of the Committee on Constitutional Legislation of the Federation Council of the Russian Federation, right? Next is Mikhail Medrish. He is the chair of the Council of the Coordination Center for TLD.ru. This we have a set of 7 panelists. We have many panelists. And the next expert is Ilya, Sachkov, general director and founder of Group IB. We have our European colleague here, Andrey Filip, general director of the Czech organization NIC.CZ. Next is Pavel Khramtsov. Pavel is the Deputy General Director of RU Center. And finally, we also have with us today Andrey Yarnikh, Head of Strategic Projects of the Kaspersky Labs. I'm very happy, and it's really a big honor for me to be among these panelists. And before I give the floor to my colleagues, I want to set the scope of this discussion, since this is not the first time that we announce a session with this name. At this forum and other international forums too have similar sessions. We decided to narrow down the topic of today's discussion to a number of questions. We will focus today on the doctrine and strategic documents that regulate information security and cybersecurity in Russia and in the countries that our esteemed foreign colleagues represent, the European countries, the European Union, and international organizations of the European region, in particular OECD, Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. We will try to structure this discussion in the following fashion. In the first round, we will focus on international and national approaches to cybersecurity strategy. We will talk about Europe. We will talk about the EU strategy of cybersecurity. We will talk about national papers in cybersecurity in Europe, and also we will talk about Russian experience, namely the concept of the strategy of Russian cybersecurity, which was drafted by a group of experts headed by Ruslan Gatarov, the former member of the Russian parliament. And then there is also this concept of the Convention on Ensuring International Information Security, dated 2011, the Doctrine of Information Security, and other papers of the same nature. We will use these papers to understand the general trend of strategic national and international regulation of security and cybersecurity. We will try to understand, we will try to compare this process in Russia and in Europe. We'll try to identify the key differentiation points and key features that our concepts and approaches have in common, and we'll talk about the potential for harmonization and all the stakeholders and how this can be done, basically. And during the second round of our discussion, we will focus on OECD proposals and acts in the area of cybersecurity, the 2011 document in particular, which proved to be a cornerstone of the organization's philosophy in this matter. And we'll talk about the culture of cybersecurity. This is known as culture of cyber and information security in the Russian legislative process. And we'll try to compare the domestic and foreign experience. We'll see who has progressed more towards achieving some practical goals, how we can ensure that experience exchange improves the practicality, the usability of the papers, and we will discuss strategic and legislative actions that should follow the adoption of the relevant documents. And we'll start with the first round, cybersecurity in Europe and Russia. With your permission, I want to take off the head of the moderator and just give you an overview of that field of thought and to identify certain contradictions and certain features of the European approach. If we talk about harmonization of national strategies and national approaches, we must understand the differences in the national and, again, international, supranational concepts. As well we know, in February 2013, the strategy of the European Union, that one was adopted and published, and then that was in February 2013, and in February 2011, 2 years before that, the strategy of cybersecurity was adopted by France, a key player in the European market. In 2011, certain items of the cybersecurity strategy of France were complemented by the White Book provisions of the Ministry of Defense of France. So, what are the main problematic points here? Well, the incompatibility of terminology. The developers of the European strategy had to face the fact that there existed a number of national documents and they wanted to harmonize different terminology, and it proved to be impossible. So in the European strategy, there is no glossary, there is no single terminology. Next, the principles and the goals of the French and the European strategies lead us to believe that France and EU have different priorities. France prioritizes national security in the key goals of the French strategy is to become a leader in cybersecurity. France wants to be independent in decision-making when it concerns national sovereignty and information security. We read it. It's written there in the strategy. They want to ensure the information independence of the national agencies. And the principles and the values of the European strategy include efficient demographic multi-stakeholderism and common accountability and equal application of values of the European Union in the digital and the real environment. So we see a big discrepancy between the two documents. The national strategy of the key powers are rooted in national sovereignty, while the European document is much more universal in its nature. So is it can a French strategy or a strategy of another major European power, can it fit the strategy of the European Union in cybersecurity? Right now we don't have an answer, because again there is great emphasis on national objectives in the French document. There is great emphasis on the technological sovereignty of the relevant countries. So this is one aspect of the European legislation. In Russia, we have other aspects that are not compatible with the European documents, be they national or international. Virtually every guidance, every strategic document creates a gap between that document and the previously adopted strategic documents. I think that I should stop here. I've said enough to introduce the topic and to proceed with the first round of discussing the supranational and national cybercrime or cybersecurity documents. To discuss, we need to discuss the ways to harmonize the legislation, to identify the key issues. Before we do that, I pass the floor to the experts. We had some preliminary discussions, and because of that, I would like to ask Mikhail Medrish to be the first to address these matters. Thank you. Dear colleagues, I was told that I only have 5 minutes, and I want to use this time to name the initiatives produced by OECD that are not very popular in Russia, at least for now, because Russia is not a member of OECD. Russia, China, India, Brazil are not members of South Africa, not members of the OECD. Yet we are negotiating our accession to that organization. Those initiatives, those documents of the OECD are very laconic, they're very concise, and I think they represent very well the current status quo. For the reasons that Oleg has already brought up, there is incompatibility of terminology. For instance, OECD does not know the notion of cybersecurity, at least in the documents of the OECD on the networks on the web. They do not talk about cybersecurity at all. They talk about security in the information networks. And yes, they have their idea what stands behind that phrase. The security in the information systems is the same as ISO standard. And telecom security is security of the telecom network. So they are not using any euphemism, they are not using any neologisms. They call a spade a spade. They call security a security in telecom and in information networks. So maybe we should also reverse our terminology and think about going back to the roots and call security security. As to this document guideline on information security of networks, whether this is a practical document, if you skim through it, if you scan it, you might think that this is a philosophical paper. It was originally published in 2002, and it replaced another document that was adopted by OECD, by the Council of OECD in 1992. It is a guidance on security in information systems and networks. Already in 1992, OECD was thinking about it. And well, actually, I need to start by giving you an introduction to the organization itself. This is a research organization that was established in 1961 by several countries of the world. Right now, it comprises 34 member states that account for about 64% of the global GDP. United States of America, Australia, Japan, all the key economies of Europe, Chile, the whole world is there. And several countries are negotiating the accession to this organization, including Russia, although Russia's negotiations were suspended following the Crimean events. I hope that this is only temporary. China and India are also talking about the adherence to this organization. They want to join OECD. This organization has a budget of €1/3 billion. They employ 2,500 people, and they publish 150 documents a year. This is a research organization. It exists for economic purposes. They analyze the state of the global economy They do their projections, and that analysis is used by all countries, all economies of the world to plan their activities. So this document already in 1992 adopted the very first document on security of information systems and networks. I will show you. It is only 4 pages long. If you disregard the footer and the header, it's just three pages of text. It records 9 principles. And yes, the countries are recommended, yes, that the new policies and documents are drafted towards promotion of the culture of security, and every 5 years the countries should update these documents and policies. The main emotional component of this document is to think about security not after the system is put into operation, but during the design stage. It says here the document separates the time of when security was remembered after the system is installed and put into operation, and the time when security is made part of the design, and at least several principles: information, accountability, the principle of response. Everyone must respond timely and jointly. Ethics. We must recognize and respect human rights and interests of each other. The principle of democracy, the principle of risks. All risks must be assessed. The principles of developing security means the principle of re-evaluation and the principle of security management. You may think that this is something very philosophical and not practical at all, but that's not the case. In 2008, as part of the natural evolution, another recommendation of the Council of OECD was passed. It's a 2-page document on protecting the information environment, and this document says that the critical infrastructure, critical environment must be protected, and there are 2 levels: domestic level and across borders. So if the country itself cannot manage, or if we deal with an international threat, then we must cooperate cross borders. Based on this document, many OECD countries, I think all OECD countries, adopted their own national legislation on protection of critical information infrastructure. A draft law also appeared in Russia. That was in 2011 when Russia started its negotiations with the OECD, and Russia committed to complying with OECD's recommendations at that time. So there is a draft law, it still exists. It has not been adopted yet, but you can review the law and see whether it matches the spirit and letter of the recommendations. I will not discuss this draft law. It caused a lot of comments. And it's not our objective to, again, discuss these comments and the draft law. But I want to say that, first of all, the draft law is in line with the OECD's guidelines. Although, again, they are guidelines, they are recommendations, but they are still quite universal. We must remember about raising awareness. We must remember about risk assessment. There must be government authority to be put in charge of such matters. But what's missing in this law is the cross-borders component. Currently, the draft law focuses only on the domestic level, but the draft law of Russia fully omits cooperation with other countries to protect critical infrastructure. It fully omits joint activities. I was trying to see whether there's another document, maybe, that speaks about this cooperation. Well, actually, there is a strategy of Russia on information security until 2020. Unfortunately, this document restricts. Well, it says here, it says clearly with whom we cooperate and with whom we do not cooperate. It just names the countries one by one. And then one of the objectives, as it is given here, the objective of the government policy is to promote the establishment of the international legal regime aimed at creating a condition promoting again information security. So it doesn't speak about creating the information security system. It doesn't say that we want to establish an international regime. No, we want to aid, we want to assist in the development of the conditions for the promotion. It is such an unprecise document. So the job is far from being completed, and if Russia wants to do something, then here is a wonderful possibility. I call upon everyone to go to OECD's website. There you will find all the documents that will help you in your daily activities. All right, thank you very much. This is the point of view of the Russian expert. That's how a Russian expert views the OECD experience and its applicability to Russia. So to keep balance, I would like to give the floor to the European colleague who will share with us his views on OECD's approaches to the cybersecurity strategy in Europe. Mikhail is absolutely right when he said that on the 13th of March, OECD suspended the process of Russia's accession to the organization. So now we have been discussing here the things that became a bit less relevant in recent days. But, well, I think this is temporary. Yeah. Well, Chris Buckridge, if we could have your comment on the policy of OECD and the experience of your country in this field.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm afraid I also won't be speaking Russian today. I'd like to thank actually the interpreters who've been doing a really good job today and allowing me to participate in these discussions and follow along. And so thank you for translating for me now. I don't work for the OECD, obviously. I work for the RIGF NCC, which is the RIGF Coordination Center. We represent the RIGF community as well as acting as regional internet registry for a region that covers Europe, the Middle East, and into Central Asia. The reason I'm speaking here today is that we also participate in the OECD processes, and we do that as part of what's called the Internet Technical Advisory Council, or ITAC. And this is a group that was formed in around 2008, coming out of the 2008 ministerial meeting that the OECD held. And it's a group that includes the regional internet registries, ICANN, the World Wide Web Consortium, a number of IXPs and other technical organizations. And we provide input to the discussions primarily that go on in the ICCP, which is the committee in the OECD that looks at internet issues, whether that be market issues or privacy or security. And so one of the things that we've been involved in as part of this process is the update that Mikhail mentioned to the the security guidelines. And I would like to thank him for providing a very thorough background to that document. It saves me having to do that for you. But so to go to quickly the process that's currently going on with that document. As was mentioned, it's an update to a document that was initially produced in 2002. That's the OECD guidelines for the security of information systems and networks. And so in May 2012, the Working Party on Security and Privacy in the Digital Economy, which has actually been, that's the new name for it. It was previously the Working Party on Information Security and Privacy. It adopted a questionnaire to begin this process of updating the guidelines. And that was sent out to all of the OECD member states. The OECD remains an intergovernmental organization. It's the member states that have the final say in all of these discussions, while there is multi-stakeholder input from groups like ITAC. But so the results of that questionnaire showed a number of very strong opinions on the part of member states. One was that there was very strong support that these guidelines did need to be updated. And so that reflects that A, the guidelines were felt to be very valuable, to provide a very useful document for governments, and B, that the changing nature of the internet, the changing nature of the challenges that were presented required that this document be updated. There was agreement from the member states that the aims and scope of the 2002 guidelines were still generally applicable, so that they weren't looking to completely rewrite the document, but to really bring it up to match the modern times. And a need for additional guidance to facilitate the interpretation and implementation of the principles by all stakeholders. So this is coming down to how those guidelines are actually implemented in national policy. And there was a feeling that there needed to be some more guidance, some more illustration of how these guidelines could be usefully applied in national strategies. So a number of processes were then started. There was discussions obviously taking place in the working party, as I mentioned. There was also an expert group formed, and members of ITAC were part of that, are part of that, along with member states and some external experts as well, who were otherwise unaffiliated with the OECD. And so there is a first draft of these, which is now circulating internally, and that's obviously going to be subject to a lot of change still. But I think it's worth highlighting a couple of the themes that come through in that revision. As was noted before, the document itself is really very high level, almost a philosophical document. But there are a couple of shifts that reflect, I think, a better understanding or a change in understanding of what these guidelines can do and how they can do it. One of them that really stands out is that where before they had referred to security, and this was mentioned earlier, there is a shift to the phrase risk-based management. So this is seeing security really as a matter of mitigating risk. And that also then is reflected in another shift, which is a shift in focus from protecting information systems and networks to actually protecting the economic and social activities that those systems and networks facilitate and support. Additionally, it's primarily targeted at leaders, and it's including new guidance on these national strategies that might be developed using the guidelines. So this is also, there is discussion of including a separate explanatory document with guidelines, which can again help member states, and it should be noted, help other countries who aren't OECD member states, for whom these guidelines are still regarded as a very influential and important document in showcasing best practices or themes that can guide them in developing their security strategies. Finally, I think it's worth noting a couple of the other things that these guidelines emphasize, and this is true of the 2002 document, but also then reflected in the 2014 revision process or discussions around that, and that's that a systemic review process is built into these guidelines. There is a recognition that security, risk-based management is an ongoing work in progress. There are going to be new challenges arise, the environment is going to change, and the guidelines, while being high level, will still need to change to adapt to those challenges. And the second and final point I'll make here is that there's an open, transparent strategy development process, and that at the OECD level includes the input of groups like ITAC, but it also means that the guidelines themselves recommend that national governments, in formulating their strategy and taking on board the guidelines and what they suggest, incorporate stakeholders throughout their community. So the technical community, business, all those who are actually affected by and who really provide expertise on what the latest challenges are and what how government strategy might meet those challenges. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Спасибо, Крис.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a very informative overview of the OECD process. I think the mechanism of regular updates and reviews of the document is very efficient, it's very practical. You don't need to invent the wheel every time. You take an existing document and you adopt it to the changed conditions. In 2008, the OECD agreed that there was no need for a review, that the 2002 principles still held true, but still the organization itself never rejected the update process, and in 2012 the need was felt to update the document, to bring it up to date, and there is this I don't know, succession probably. There is the original document, and the new version succeeds the original document. I want to continue this discussion by turning to the concept of the cybersecurity strategy in Russia. It involved a whole group of experts. I think that many of them are present here in the room, and some of the experts on the stage also participated in drafting of this concept. It was not the usual routine process that was used to draft this document. It was much more open and transparent, and it involved many more experts than what is usual for a Russian legislative process. Cybersecurity for the first time appeared in the title. How much of the European experience was taken into account? This concept of the strategy has been already presented, and now the question arises of what happens to this strategy in the future. So the European experience of updating the document, of the document's evolution, how applicable, to what degree are these principles applicable to the Russian concept? Ms. Bokova? Yes, thank you very much for inviting me to speak here. I wanted to describe the main processes of our work and the main avenues of our work. If you compare the two documents, you will see that one echoes the other. I have been appointed the chair of the Commission for the Development of the Information Society of the Federation Council, and in this capacity I wanted to tell you how we work with draft legislation and various policies. A lot of attention in the strategy is paid to developing a safe culture in cyberspace and to the elaboration of joint approaches to cooperation domestically and across borders. Digital literacy and safe behavior in cyberspace are important parts of the strategy. In our commission, we promote safe behavior in cyberspace at various educational facilities, and we have also been discussing the content filtration and content control in schools at our commission at its latest session. And our commission drafted methodological technical recommendations for telecom operators with respect to content filtration. The experts have observed that content is not always filtered by the operators. And our commission also developed a methodological recommendation for content filtration in schools, in educational facilities. These two documents, one for operators, the other for schools, they have been formalized. They have been signed as proper regulations, as proper bylaws by the Ministry of Education, by the Ministry of Telecom, and I think that very soon all the mobile operators as well as schools will receive those documents and will have to comply with them. So we want to thank the expert community who helped us significantly in reviewing these two regulations and adopting them. Also, at the initiative of our commission, we held parliamentary hearings for on the topic children and internet security. Ms. Matvienko, the Speaker of the Parliament, presided over the proceedings, and these hearings resulted in a set of recommendations, and if you don't mind, I would like to take some time to go through them very quickly, because again, I believe them to be very practical and down to earth and very relevant in the context of the strategy. So we decided to establish a single system of monitoring of the use of internet resources in educational facilities. A comprehensive approach to control is what we believe will make the internet safe for the younger users. This system will be able to identify abuse of the internet resources in schools. Another recommendation of the parliamentary hearings was to include safe internet classes into the curriculum at schools. We thought that this can be part of computer sciences, and then we can also have individual classes or like one-off classes for children of different age groups where they will learn about safe behavior online, and we have already agreed about that with the Ministry of Education. There should also be some campaigns aimed at children and at adults, at parents, to improve the online culture. We are planning parent-teacher meetings at school where the parents and the teachers will jointly discuss the use of internet by children. Another recommendation passed by our parliamentary hearings was to certify computers and tablets with the aim of establishing parental control, with making it mandatory for the computers and other devices used by school children. We can't make it a law yet, and we know that parental control is an option in all of the devices basically, but we can't make it mandatory for school children. So all that we can do, what is left to us, is to use the means of propaganda. We must promote those ideas. We must raise awareness in the parent community, because not every parent has heard about parental control. We have a special program for the protection of the childhood, and one of the key components of that program is education. So in conclusion, we have such a wide range of recommendations. It's an open document. Very soon we will publish its final version at the Federation Council website. We will monitor fulfillment of every recommendation, and our Commission for the Development of the Information Society continues its work. We welcome all experts who would like to cooperate with us. We are ready not only to discuss matters of education, we prefer to take a holistic approach to the safety and security of the internet, and our main allies in this fight are experts. So if you would like to join our commission, if you want to help us with your knowledge, with your expertise, you're mostly welcome to contact us, because our priority is safety of children and also of adults in the internet. There is this generation gap, and not always the grown-ups can reasonably assess the risks of the internet for their children. Thank you very much, Ms. Bokova. It was interesting to learn about the work of your commission. I would love to hear more about how your commission's work and its documents rely on international and European experience. Well, maybe we will have time to discuss it during the Q&A session. Well, actually, I think we go even beyond the international experience. So, I mean, everyone is talking about safety and education and everything, and that's obviously one of our priorities, but we have gone more towards practical implementation of these conceptual ideas contained in the strategic documents. Right, thank you very much. You kept underlying this idea of safe conduct in the internet and education, and educating the school children and implanting this culture of safe behavior. I would like to ask now the practitioners, those the people who represent organizations that fight threats in cyberspace. I mean Ilya Sachkov, and I mean Andrey Yarnikh. What is cybersecurity culture from your point of view? What does it mean? What is safe conduct or safe behavior? What is the best practice? And what is progress? How do we know that we have progressed? I want to give the floor first to Ilya Sachkov, because he doesn't have much time and he will have to leave us before the end of the session. Good afternoon, colleagues. Well, I wanted to shift a little bit the focus of your question. I want to start with a document that doesn't exist yet. I attend many conferences of the Council of Europe and of the OSCE, and I keep listening to the same politicians since 2008, 2009, and I keep hearing the same good ideas, and I keep seeing the same wonderful documents produced by these esteemed organizations. Russia has a strategy, and we too were involved in drafting the Russian strategy or the Russian concept. But I think that what's missing is a foundation. Internet is such a global thing, and every country at the same time is adopting its national legislation. I think that it's something that we failed to notice. In 2013, we found ourselves in a new digital age owing to two things, two events. And I think it just kind of passed us by. They are not even hackers anymore. They are your common criminals. I'll explain what I mean. I think that the United Nations, as the most universal organization of the planet, should adopt one document, one convention to fight crime online. You can adopt as many, well, we are all in favor of the cybersecurity policy and strategy, and we were experts during drafting, but it's this strategy will not make any sense without international cooperation. A crime is now initiated in one country, it is completed in a different country, and the proceeds of crime are laundered in yet another country. This is an internet governance forum, and you are all an internet community, you are the industry community. Do you know what .onion is? This domain .onion? 7 people in the room? 8? The shadow internet. 2013. At the end of 2013, you can watch streamed video in the shadow internet. You know that .onion is Tor, Tor. This morning, as I was preparing to this conference, I made several screenshots and going back to content filters and children's security. This, I don't think that you can see very well. Well, anyways, I will read. This is not a fake. It's not a Photoshop. I can prove to you that these things exist. I sell refurbished guns and pistols, enough life left. Deliveries from 50 units up, price 50,000 rubles up, with a silencer, another 10,000 on top. One set includes a gun and 10 cartridges. Delivery to Moscow. People will deliver it to you to Moscow. They will bury it in some park, and you will go and dig it out. You will get all the instructions by email. And here is the picture. This is large-scale manufacture of guns, and all of this exists in the shadow internet. Drugs. We'll skip drugs. This is not an ad for Tor. This is not a commercial. If we talk about a crime, I want to show you that here is crime, and the worst way to fight crime is to keep silent about it. What you find there is offerings to steal for you. I don't know. Crime is sold there. When the politicians fight over phrases and words, while in the shadow internet there is very little internal fraud. There is great trust between all the subjects in the shadow internet. There is this institute of guarantor. There is it's an intermediary between the customer and the contractor. All the money passes through the intermediary. And another thing is that anyone in the internet can buy a service called hooliganism. You can pay for somebody else to scratch your neighbor's car and write offensive words on the hood. We work in Moscow and Moscow region. You pay with bitcoins, 100% prepayment. And please write using PGP. PGP encoding is a must. Unencrypted requests will be ignored. Drugs, again, I promised you some. One government official could not believe that you can order drugs now online and they will be delivered to your door by the Post of Russia. We did it, and we proved to him that it happened. Yes, it took some time. The drugs, while the Post of Russia was delivering them, the drugs went bad. I just want you to realize that we live now in a new digital age. It's a totally new environment, and if in 2014 we do not come together and agree once and for all on the international arena of what we are going to do with that, then we can have as many regional and national and even international forums and talk about strategies and concepts. This is the parallel universe. The people live there. One last minute. These are my favorite. 1986. They're almost my age. They don't give a damn about the strategies and concepts and cybersecurity and conventions. They live in their own parallel universe. We have here the politicians, people from the Federation Council. If you would just listen, my colleagues and I, we are involved in about, I don't know, 80% of investigations of cybercrime in Russia. In 2013, we found ourselves in a new digital age, shadow internet and cryptocurrencies, digital currencies. Many people in the industry even are not aware of that. So my main message to you, everything else will make no sense. And yes, we need to educate children, but what we are teaching them now is dark. It's antiquity. It's the society, Russia. We know in Russia how to arrest criminals and put them into prison, but many of them have already migrated to places like Thailand, and we cannot reach them there. Guns, drugs, hooliganism. It has nothing to do with computer. That's not cybercrime. That's real crime. Sold online. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ilya. I have a very quick question to you, and I want you to give me a very quick answer. Do you have your own proposals? Proposals for the underlying principles of such an international document? I think it should be on the same lines as the international treaty on nuclear weapons, because it's the same issue, really. One country can destroy the other country at a great distance. It's the same here. It's a remote crime, and nuclear weapons, it's such a tangible thing, and I think that those crimes are very much, for me at least, they are the same as nuclear weapons, weapons of mass destruction. Yes, I keep hearing this analogy quite often. Now, many people compare cybercrime to WMDs. I know that the Kaspersky lab is also proposing the establishment of an IAEA, the International Agency for Nuclear Energy, for Atomic Energy, or a similar agency to govern internet. So Kaspersky Labs. Yes, my name is Andrey Yarnikh, and I am indeed from the Kaspersky Labs. Thank you for giving me the floor. I want to pick up where Ilya left. I think all practitioners are worried by the same thing. Every day we try to patch our blankets, but cybercrime is a very strong community. It transboundary. It has a branched out network where all roles are allocated, and there are people who know how to write the malicious code, and there are others who know how to sell it. It's a very multi-level, very well-structured organization. So, and in terms of response to international cybercrime, we only get some local initiatives, and they are developed in the spirit that yes, international is the internet is the international treasure, and we don't want to lose it locally. So protection that is suggested is often disproportionate to the threats, and it results in localization of the internet. Although internet is transboundary, it's international, and that is its strength, that is its power. So what we are missing, I agree with all the speakers, is a global document produced by the UN, or I don't know, and I think this document must be similar to what we have today in terms of the WMD regime. If the countries of the world manage to agree on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, then why can't the countries of the world agree on stopping cybercrime in the same fashion? What we observe today is at the level of terminology, even, well, everyone says that we should go back to grassroots, but even if we do, we stumble on terms. If we cannot even agree on definitions, then how can we agree on all other articles and items? There is little research of cybercrime, and there is little prosecution of cybercrime. This results in abuse of law, and yes, it results in Tor and other similar networks for whom the main content is malicious content and crime. Another worrying trend that has caught our attention is that instead of malware, instead of monetization of crime, there is now a new worrying factor in the internet, that's arms sale, trade of arms. Internet is not only a tool of political resistance, but also it's a tool for a certain criminal groups. They develop software that is today classified as criminal. So if we do not stop it now, then very soon the internet will become a battlefield. For you to understand, battlefield is when the internet is attacked all the time from all sides in the interests of certain parties or countries, since the most common tool of that is DDoS, and these things already happen. The user computers are infected by malware, and different criminals will buy the attacking computers from each other. I think that global crime requires global response, global rescue. So what we need now is a supranational regulation, and maybe even supranational cyber police. Thank you, Andrey. Now, this is a very interesting way the discussion has turned. Regional, local efforts are not enough anymore. We hear such calls to stronger international cooperation more often now, but well, as of now, there is no international instrument, and law can be enforced only at the local or regional level as far as internet safety is concerned, in the absence of an international legal framework. So we have strategic documents, then there is also bilateral, multilateral, international cooperation, and then there are response centers to computer incidents that respond to the incidents and that cooperate too, regionally and internationally. I want to invite to the discussion Pavel Khramtsov from RU Center. Pavel, you don't have more than 5 minutes, if you don't mind. I think I don't need the whole 5 minutes. Concepts are fine, and let them be drafted. But life goes beyond concepts. Andrey says that time is coming when we will be constantly under attack. I think that the time is here and now. In Rus Center, your regular attack is 70 gigabit, 120 gigabit. These things happen every month. It's not something out of the ordinary anymore. I will come back to the issue of international cooperation, but now I just wanted to say that any concept, an international concept, is sooner or later implemented in the national legislation. All the European and Russian concepts, they try to usually they address a particular problem. Gatarov's commission started by defining its scope. There is national security, well, that doesn't fall within our remit. Then there is social security, well, that does not fall within our remit as well. Which part of the security then we are talking about? What part of the security can we regulate? In terms of public security, we have laws to protect children, we have laws to protect intellectual property. Very often, technical implementation of such laws on security is what they do is, well, I can easily imagine when the big three Russian mobile operators will switch off half of the Russian internet because one court decided that some resource is illegal, and then it will take us 2 months to understand why this filtering of IP traffic happened and what were the grounds for this resolution of that district court. Beeline has disconnected 75,000 domain names, and Beeline still cannot give a clear answer of what was the rule on which they based that decision. Then there is this organization, it's called FIRST. It unites various centers, and that's me going back to international cooperation. So when there are transboundary attacks, to follow a formal procedure through authorized competent bodies proves to be very cumbersome and proves to be very lengthy when we deal with phishing, when we deal with major cache losses. So to use formal authorized channels, it's just not expedient. But there is always informal communication between the teams that fight computer incidents. Usually such informal contacts are much more efficient than the formal procedures. Last year, there were attacks on Echo of Moscow, the radio station, and they have a web portal. Then before the Sochi Olympics, there were attacks on the Olympic portals. So we talked to our foreign colleagues very informally, very quickly, and they helped us resolve all issues within 2 or 3 days. Of course, no logs, no technical information, complete technical information would not be provided to you if cooperation is informal. But the question is whether you want the things to work, or whether you want to follow some formal procedures. Andrey, Filip, he hasn't spoken yet, so I suggest that he extends us the honor of speaking last during this session. Mr. Filip, maybe you can just share with us your thoughts on what you find most interesting or exciting subjects, or anything that you would like to add. I don't have a particular question to you, but what concerns you? If there is anything that you would like to share with us, then please use your 5 minutes.
Very much. It's very hard to follow the conversation, even if the translation is excellent. But I have a couple of comments, and especially to what Ilya and Andrey said about a call for international law that should address the cybercrime, or in their perspective, it is more crime advertised online. I don't know how many of you were in the WCIT conference, which is the conference where the international telecommunication regulations was discussed and actually agreed. And you probably remember that it was very strange discussion at the time. The world seemed to be separated into certain blocks, and to me there was a lack of trust on especially one word which probably has different meaning in different languages, and that was security. Every time the security, internet security, or anything related to internet was mentioned, and it was my part of the world, the European Americans, stopped the discussion because there is a real lack of trust between some of the countries. Although I understand your call for such an organization, I'm afraid we have to go back to something that was mentioned at first. I believe by Mikhail, who said the terminology is not very stable, and we have to understand that the word security has a lot of meanings. It may be really cybersecurity, information security, but many countries, interpret the word for example, national security, and then we discuss, what we want to protect or what we want to avoid, because that's also a part of security. And we all know that different regimes, and I'm not picking on any of them, have really different views of what is security. Although we can very easily agree on child abuse, which is out of scope, and there is a lot of international agreements on this. It's very hard to agree on anything else because, as I said, this word is very overloaded and has different meaning, and it will take some time to create trust or cooperation on this level, on international level. On the other hand, I would like to underline what Pavel has said, because that was something very important. We are talking about official documents, strategies of governments, and things we believe are on very high level. On the other hand, all those documents are sometimes not very practical. The importance of OECD documents was questioned here. And one more important thing is that there is another level of cooperation, and Pavel has mentioned that, and it's a cooperation of private companies. The organization like FIRST or maybe Terena in European region create another level of trust, and it's a very effective way how many incidents are solved even before governments agreed on anything. So that's probably more important to build those contacts and don't wait for the governments and don't wait for some strategies that would save everything, because that's probably impossible. And even if it works on national level, it's very problematic to implement it on the international level. So one thing I took from this discussion, and I think it's very important that although the international policy and the status of cooperation among the countries is changing, there is still a very good network of people, many technically equipped people who take care of security, and they usually do understand what it means actually, and go on. So even beyond the actual political situation or anything else. Yeah, that's probably the most important things I wanted to share with you now.
Спасибо большое, Andrey. Я бы из прозвучавшего...
Thank you very much, Andrey. From what you said, this world conference on this international conference in Dubai. I fully agree with you. I support you. There was very little trust between the participants, and as a result, we had a rather contraventional resolution. And I think that it's something that we should strive to avoid when aiming for a universal document or an approach. It seems like there is an urgent need in having a global mechanism. Yes, I will. I will give you the floor. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to finish what I've been saying. Although there is an urgent need to have a universal document, very often the documents are not adopted because there is little trust between the stakeholders, between the key players. Not always a consensus is possible. So maybe for now, at least, we are doomed to stay within regional mechanisms or informal mechanisms, as you have rightfully pointed out. But the general trend is, yeah, it seems like we feel the need that there is a request for a global instrument. Chris, you wanted to say something? Please go ahead.
So, and actually, I think I'm probably repeating a little bit of what you said. I think coming from what Andrey was saying and what others have said, there are sort of three really clear points here. The wicket is an example that getting any sort of global agreement of this kind is very hard, a very long process, and not guaranteed to succeed in anyway. Second point is that we're seeing these challenges coming at us right now. I mean, Ilya's presentation before showed how quickly this is developing and changing and coming at us. So I think, yeah, the third point that stems from both of those is that this sort of informal cooperation is the key to doing this. And I think that's something that the RIPE NCC sort of finds from our own perspective, because we talk with a lot of law enforcement agencies around the world, with Interpol, EC3, the FBI even to some extent. A lot of the time what they need to do their job is actually already provided by the RIRs in the public databases that we provide. They don't necessarily know that. They don't have that expertise, and so by talking to us and us talking to them, we can actually help them do their job and find that the mechanisms are maybe already in place and just not being utilized to the extent that they might be.
Спасибо. На мой взгляд, разумно.
Oh, quite reasonable. That's quite reasonable. We have 12 minutes left for the questions and answers. And if the organizers do not push us away from this room, then maybe we can take the whole of 20 minutes. We have this wonderful girl with a microphone, so if you have a question, please raise your hand, and she will bring you the microphone. And please do not forget to introduce yourselves. No questions? No one? Technical break. I represent National Customs Authority. I have a question to Ms. Bokova from the Federation Council. We all have children, and among my friends, I have school principals and school teachers. You were saying that you want to develop a concept of a common monitoring something, a beautiful name, a very long title, very beautiful. I spoke to a teacher recently. He said that when a commission came to the school, they switched off the Wi-Fi, they switched off the internet. and that was it. And that's how the school survived. And a different school that did not switch the internet during the audit of the commission from the education department, that school was fined. There was a penalty for that school. So I wonder how you want to achieve your very noble objectives of bringing the internet to every school and at the same time protecting the school children. When this story with Microsoft, they at one point the government decided that it shouldn't be Microsoft, but it shouldn't be some kind of openware. And openware proved to be more expensive than Microsoft software. So again, on paper, it looks all very beautiful, but I'm sorry if I haven't articulated my question clearly enough. Yes, I'm aware that such things happen. Every school that has internet access is afraid of violating one regulation or another. The schools are afraid of fines from law enforcement, from the prosecutor's office, from the Department of Education for providing children with access to the internet resources that should be banned. That's why we focus so much on content filtration for schools. We want to establish standards of content filtration. Sometimes schools pay for internet traffic, and they also pay extra for content filtration. It's a complete chaos. So we believe that we can address that issue. We can fix this problem through regulation. First of all, we will regulate the technical means of filtration, and schools will not pay for it. Internet traffic should come together with content filtration. So this is a regulation aimed at operators. And this monitoring system to which you referred, this is not some abstract idea. This is an experience, it's a best practice that we adopted. About 8 regions of Russia are testing this monitoring system as we speak. We have data from one of the regions. Without this monitoring system, from January, we had about 5 million hits on websites with offensive information, let's call it this way. So after we installed the monitoring system, we saw a dramatic decline in the hits on such websites. Again, this monitoring system will not require some dramatic government funding. We want to well, we'll see what comes out of this pilot project in the 8 regions, but so far the results that we see are quite satisfactory. And again, we are working here on 2 fronts. First, content filtration and operators. And of course, we must work with the law enforcement agencies. We must educate them, and we also cooperate with the Ministry of Internal Affairs to train the auditors that come to schools. I just wanted to remind you that about 5 years ago, all schools, it was a project to connect schools to the internet. Articom was a single operator provider. All schools were connected. There was content filtration. We don't want to discuss the merits of this content filtration. Well, at least it was there. Maybe we would have done it differently if we had the resources that we have today 5 years ago. But in any case, the budgets were allocated, but then the program was over, the budget money was spent, and that was the end of it. Now we have new resources and we must start again. And it's wonderful that you have a vision, but I think again we should have one operator, be it Rostelecom, be it RTCom doesn't exist anymore as an operator. They handed over all their resources to Rostelecom. But I still believe that when we talk about schools, then there must be one operator that will ensure the consistency, the uniformity of the means employed, that will do content filtration in a uniform manner. But if you have different content providers and everyone, or telecom providers, and they will do as they please, then the results may not be very satisfactory. Yes, please. Pavlov Sergey. Speaking here as a father of a child. Last year, we had this parent conference. And the teacher explained to us how to use e-logs, e-diaries, e-textbooks. The teacher said, the bell rings, and I'm terrified. I can't hear the school children. The class is over, but I don't hear the sound. No one is running in the corridors. No one is playing. Every single student is on his device, keeping very silent. That happens in schools now. It was a comment, not a question. All right, we have time for one last question. Andrey? I have a question to Andrey Yarnikh, who represents Kaspersky Labs. I know that your organization is a member of the Impact International Initiative. From your perspective, how productive is Russia's input into these organizations' activities? What are the benefits that Russia gets from its membership? And do you believe in the future of the processes that were started there by this organization? Are they really conducive to internet security? Well, any international cooperation is useful. Any international cooperation is productive, and we must be present on the international arena. As to my opinion, with respect to the latest initiatives, I can't really tell you anything. I know that our experts participated in the sessions, but I just don't have the data about the very latest initiatives. Well, it's a pity that Ilya had to leave so soon. I think that he would have been able to tell us more. Group IB, together with Kaspersky Labs, are members of the Impact initiatives. Maybe Ilya would be able to tell us more. Russia as a country, as a state, is not a member of this mechanism. Only individual corporations, Russian corporations, are members. I don't know why they decided to stay away from the Impact, maybe for reasons of international security, I wonder. And Mikhail? I just wanted to say why I think we are not able to reach an international consensus. Sovereignty in the internet epoch. Sovereignty is something that must be protected, something that must be preserved, and all the outsiders should be repelled. I think that the concept of sovereignty is the concept that separates peoples, countries. I think the internet is pushing the countries towards surrendering part of their sovereignty. Every international treaty that a country signs means that the country has surrendered a little bit of its sovereignty towards achieving a common goal. How soon it will happen? Well, it's hard to predict, but it's something that must happen, will happen. If I may, I also wanted to add a couple of words to this discussion, and I have at the start of this session, I have given you an overview of the cyber strategies of the EU and of France, and that's where we see this collision, this crash between the cultures, really cultures of security, national and international. The France's concept is based on the idea of sovereignty. No doubt about it, but there is also a counter trend, if you will. The governments pay. Also, on the one hand, the governments talk about globalization and becoming more international, but on the other hand, they protect more and more their sovereignty. And it's not just the totalitarian regimes that try to protect the critical infrastructure. It's France and other democracies. And they believe in what they do. I wonder how this cultural crash will resolve itself in the future. The time has run out. I think that this is an interesting topic for research with major practical implications. Russia will also have to make a choice of which trend to adhere to, the globalization trend or the sovereignty trend. If there are no more other comments, then I want to thank all the panelists and all the participants and the organizers for making this event happen.